Chatman. Tony is a corporate relationship expert, is an incredible speaker, an incredible author, an incredible trainer. Tony, thank you for joining me today and welcome to Brilliance Speaker.
Thanks, Mark, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time today. So I'll jump into our first question. My first question is, can you share your story with us up to being a speaker, an author, and such an incredible trainer?
Sure. So I was actually trained as a chemical engineer, and I was happy, loving my life. And one day I was thrust into a leadership position that I wasn't ready for. And, it kind of went like this. My boss came and gave me what I call the pitch. The pitch is, man, Tony, you're doing really great. We want to talk to you about your career path. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you a small group of people to lead. All you have to do is get them to work just like you're working. Don't worry, it'll be easy. And it was far from easy, right? Because there's all the things that they don't tell you, all the things you're not prepared for. And I realized I was trained to be an engineer, but not trained to be a leader. And leadership is all about relationships. So I made it my aim to learn as much about relationships as I learned about engineering. And so from a leadership perspective, that really created my trajectory. But later in life, as I had been successful in a number of leadership positions, but was really trying to recalculate my direction, I kind of sat back and I looked and I realized I'd always leveraged two things to be successful. One was the ability to build relationships, and the second one was the ability to communicate effectively. And for me, combining those two is what really cast me into the idea of being a corporate relationship expert and a professional speaker, because I get to really leverage those two strengths.
That's amazing, and it's great that you found your purpose and you changed direction. Sometimes you just have to follow what your heart's telling you to do, and having the courage to become a leader, because I do believe, like leadership, you can learn to become a leader.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Incredible. So my next question is, your work all revolves around leadership and communication, people working together. Can you share with us how people working together, great leadership, great communication, can transform an organization?
Well, sure. I mean, an organization is nothing more than a group of people working together, right? So leadership, first, it determines how much productivity is there, but more importantly, leadership drives culture. Leadership determines whether the culture is hostile or productive, whether it's a culture of harassment or inclusion, whether there's innovation or stagnation. It's really determined by leadership, because leadership charts the course, and then leadership determines what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. And that really is what drives culture. For most organizations, their culture looks like one or two or a few of their leaders.
Yes, and a lot of organisations sometimes get it wrong and they don't treat people properly.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you do give your best to people and you look after people, you get the best back out of them. So I'm really big on collaboration. So I do really like what you're about, Tony.
Well, thank you. I mean, to be honest, there's not that many good leaders out there, right? Most of us have had far more bad bosses than good bosses, which, for
Yes.
me is job security, right? I stay employed because of that, unfortunately. But so what you said is really important. Leadership comes down to two things. It's understanding how to work with individual people, how to work with people. So like you said, collaboration, getting people to work together. And then it's group dynamics, which they're different animals. Most people can do one or the other. A lot of people can do neither, honestly. But I've learned the more you treat people with dignity and respect, the more it's reciprocated back to you. And even if it takes a lot of time because people have had bad experiences with other people and other leaders, over time, as they become accustomed to you treating them properly, most people are really good people and they begin to treat you well in response. People want to be treated well, people want to feel good about themselves. And the hardest part is to treat people really well when it seems like they deserve it the least. Because sometimes people will do things that makes you feel like, well, they don't deserve my best. But maybe in the moment it doesn't look like that, but they need your best. And that's really what a good leader does.
I absolutely love that. That shows great ethics, and it's all about building trust as well. So by building the trust, you get that good relationship. So I do really like that, Tony.
Thank
Great
Yeah.
ethics, great relationships, and building trust. So that's amazing. So my next question is, sometimes the speaking industry can be an hard industry. What tips, advice have you got for aspiring speakers or established speakers that feel a little bit stuck and they want to make some progress?
Okay. First, work on your craft. Always work on the art of speaking. And I say that because many speakers start off working on, how do I monetize this? How do I make money? How do I market this? But good speakers eventually rise to the top. I mean, it becomes very obvious who's really good and who's not. Second, find your unique message. What is it that you have to say now? I say this knowing when you first get in the industry, it's much easier to sound like someone else that you really like. Musicians go through this. I'm a bass player. Bands go through this all the time where they sound like their favorite band. As a speaker, I began in the industry opening for Les Brown, who's a very famous motivational speaker, right? Which is crazy. Think about that. That's crazy. My first paid speaking engagement was in Bermuda opening for Les Brown. That's pretty cool, right? It's mind blowing. But I realized for a few years, I was sounding more like Les Brown than myself. Now, there's positives to that because he's very good, but I was losing my authenticity by doing it. And I had to finally get confident enough about my message, about my perspective, about really even internally, who am I? Am I good enough to do this? So that my authentic message could come through. I think that was really, really important. And I say it in that order, art of speaking, then your message, because I've rarely found someone who has something unique to say who's not a good speaker. There's something about learning the art of speaking that makes you refine what you're saying, rethink what you're saying, and come up with your own unique perspective. Because unfortunately, the vast majority of speakers are saying the exact same thing. They're slightly nuanced in how they say it. There's slight differences, but they're really saying the same thing. And to be able to say something that's unique is very powerful. After those two things, for me, it's find people who believe in your message. It's easy to go out and just try to market, sell, sell. And sometimes when we're stuck, it's because we're not saying who we authentically are. Like there's a lot of subjects I can talk about that I'm good at, but they're not really me, right? I can do a stress management workshop and I can do it well, but it's not really me. But if you have me do something on unconscious bias or leading change or going through change, I can do that better than almost anyone in the world. And I really believe that, right? So as you find that, you'll begin to find people who they're almost like your evangelists. They believe in your message and they begin to spread your message to the right networks. And the last thing, and it sounds obvious, treat everyone well. Just treat, I'm serious. I go out of my way to treat all of my clients well, to treat, there are times I take a loss on projects because I want to make sure they're satisfied and happy. But because of that, I always have great evaluations. I always have lots of repeat business. And you just don't know who everyone knows. And when someone speaks highly of you, that brand, that reputation precedes you and it opens up doors that you couldn't imagine. So those are the three things. And if can I add one more little caveat? One last thing?
You can.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid of growth. Um, Honestly, like I'm, you know, changing some things in my business. I have this little saying. So I still play golf a lot, right? And there's these golf carts, and it's funny when they're going down a hill, they'll hit a certain speed, and then they won't go faster because there's a governor on in the U.S. they call it a governor on the motor, which means it will only go so fast. It won't go above, 12 miles an hour or something like that. Too many people put a governor on what they're capable of, right? We let fear of success, fear of failure, fear of what other people will think of us. We all this other talk that's negative. We let it put a cap on what we're capable of accomplishing. And the minute you begin to remove that, the world opens up for you. So those are the things I would say for both new speakers, aspiring speakers, and established speakers who feel like they're in a rut.
Well, Tony, there was so much gold there. So I'd like everyone to give Tony some hearts. Feel free to share the broadcast and to speak for Les Brown for your first paid speaking gig. That is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And there's just so many tips there: building relationships, learning your craft, getting over fear. You really touched on some great points. So that will really, really help new aspiring speakers and speakers that are feeling a little bit stuck. So I do really appreciate those pearls of wisdom there.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let me throw one other thing. It just hit me. And you're really doing this now. You've created this network, right, of people. We can kind of come on your page and talk to each other, which is, hate to say it, it's brilliant, right? It's really, what you're doing is phenomenal. And even when you reached out to me, you're doing it the right way, which is awesome. Speakers can't minimize the need to have relationships with other speakers. I'm not competing with you. The world's too big. The world needs all of our messages. But we need people you can talk to, because sometimes it's like if you look at my Facebook page, you go, man, Tony's life is awesome. And truthfully, my life is pretty awesome. I travel all the time. I love what I do. But there are moments where it's lonely, it's frustrating, it's depressing. And to have other speakers that you can talk to who know what it's like, who can help you through, or sometimes just somebody that you can vent to and just say stuff to, means the world. Over the last 2 years, my network of speakers has probably changed the trajectory of my business more than anything. The people I can talk to, people I can bounce ideas off of, the people who will just say, you know what, Tony, you need to change this on your webpage or on your video, or, don't be afraid to up your fee. That's like the biggest one I'm hearing a lot. Like, Tony, you charge too little, charge more. And you think, yeah, that sounds great, until you have to actually say your fee to someone. And it's like, But having those people, that support group around you, which I really appreciate what you're building here. We all need that type of support group of people that we're not competing with. We're really in a symbiotic relationship. We're helping each other grow, and we're all benefiting from it. So I think that would be really helpful, and I appreciate what you're doing here.
Well, thank you. And that goes back to collaboration and not competition. And I really do believe everyone collaborating together, everybody thrives. It doesn't need to be such a dog eat dog competitive world out there. And that's all about ethics too. So again, you're showing great ethics and showing that you're about collaboration, which I absolutely love, Tony.
Well, thank you.
So my next question is, you've got a book called The Force Multiplier. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So the force multiplier, the idea is there's this term, and it started from, well, I was exposed to it as a friend of mine was being deployed to go fight in a war. And a person who was about to be promoted to lieutenant colonel described this person as a force multiplier. He said, by your very presence, you bring the best out of every asset around you. And I thought about that from a leadership perspective, and I said, that's really what we should be as leaders, right? We should be able to bring the best out of everyone around us. And often we're good at leading certain people, but not everyone. So I really took years of experience and research and speaking with, I've trained thousands, if not tens of thousands of leaders on leadership. So I have a perspective of it, but I also have a certain amount of feedback that I've received. And most of the people get stuck in the same places. And so I wanted to write a book that was practical. And that's really the biggest thing. It's a book that you could read and you could go, okay, I can actually implement this as I'm reading it. And I can, help manage this person better. I can help manage this person better. I can delegate this better. I can hit this better. Because so many books are written from such a high level that most people don't achieve that level. Not everyone in an organization is the decision maker. So that was really it. And it's really about how to establish firm, productive relationships in the workplace. And then there's a whole section on the group dynamics part of it. What people who've read it have started to realize is that it's not really a leadership book at all. It's a relationship book. And it's the type of relationship book that, yeah, you can use on your coworker, and yeah, you can use with your boss. But so many people have walked up to me after a workshop and said, you know what, now I get my spouse, or you just help me with my children, or you help me with my neighbor, because relationships have the same dynamics, they just have different situations. So that's really what the force multiplier is a bit about, and it's been phenomenal. For example, here in the U.S., the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Inspector General is starting to use that book for training of its supervisors, which, that's kind of a big deal because they're very exclusive in how they bring information to their people. But they look at the book and they say, this is real and it's practical, and it allows people to be great leaders while, as you've mentioned earlier, being able to keep their morals and ethics and character, because you don't have to sacrifice one for the other. So that's been the whole thing about the force multiplier. Everyone who's read it has been amazed. There's actually a personality assessment that goes with it. It's a life changer if you read it and implement it.
And that must feel amazing, getting feedback that you're helping people in their home life as well as their businesses. I mean, what a compliment that you're making such an impact through your work and through your book. So that's absolutely amazing, Tony. So I'd recommend anyone getting the book. And would you mind dropping a link in the comments later for the book, Tony?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Love to.
Brilliant. So my next question, Tony, is what are you working on right now? What's new for Tony?
So, I talked earlier about taking the governor off of your business. So for me, or off your life, for me, I'm going from, I've done a lot of workshops recently. I'm going back to doing more keynotes, but on top of it, to do large scale consulting. For years, I've had companies say, can you help us implement this? Can you help us do this? And I've had the skill set, but I didn't want the hassle. In all honesty, I was like, man, it's work, hiring people, just the chaos of it all. And finally, I said, if I'm really serious about making a change, then I have to be willing to do the things, or I should, willing to make an impact. I said making change, but making an impact, I have to be willing to do the things that change so that impact can be big, right? And so now I'm starting to, I'm hiring a staff, bringing in other trainers that we can go out and spread that message on a larger scale, but also that we can walk an organization from start to finish. So that's the biggest thing I'm working on. I just finished my first TED Talk, which was awesome, and waiting for that to get uploaded. So excited to see how that goes. And, life is good. I'm moving into New York City. I live in New York, but I've never lived in the city. And I'm moving right into Midtown Manhattan. Hopefully I'll still be alive in 6 months. It's exciting. So that's what's going on with Tony moving forward.
Well, congratulations with the TED Talk,
Thank
and it sounds like you're still growing massively and still stepping out of your comfort zone, and that's you leading the way with your leadership skills and showing that you're walking the walk and talking the talk. So, congratulations on all that you're achieving, Tony. I've really, really enjoyed interviewing you today.
Thank you so much, Mark. I've enjoyed being here.
And can I ask you, how can people connect with you? How can people follow you, get in touch?
Sure. So my name is Tony Chatman. It's CHAT as in Tom, MAN. You can find me on Facebook, Tony Chatman, LinkedIn, Tony Chatman, Twitter, at Tony Chatman. The only one that's different is Instagram is Tony Chatman Speaks, but I'm working on getting at Tony Chatman on Instagram as well. I also do have I'm starting kind of a more of a fan page on Facebook. It'll be Tony Chatman's Force Multiplier. But if you look up Tony Chatman, you'll find me. My website is www.tonychatman.com. So trying to make it really simple. If you look for me, you'll find me.
Well, thank you. Everyone connect with Tony. He's an absolutely incredible person with great ethics. I've really, really enjoyed interviewing you, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I really appreciate it, Tony.
Thanks so much, Mark, for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks for all that you're doing.
Thank you, Tony, and thanks everyone for watching. Take care. Bye.